The tension at Mercedes right now isn't the kind you can smooth over with a polite press release. It's the kind that lingers in the air, making every interview and paddock whisper feel loaded with something more. George Russell might be all smiles in front of the cameras, but behind the scenes he knows exactly where he stands, and it's not in the most secure position. The public narrative is simple enough. Contract talks are ongoing, everyone's confident in finding the right deal, and it's all just a matter of ironing out details. But anyone paying attention can see there's a bigger chess game in motion. At the center of it all is Toto Wolff, a man who never makes a move without thinking 3 steps ahead. He's built a reputation on being pragmatic, almost coldly so when it comes to driver lineups. And right now, the way he's handling Russell's future screams one thing: he's keeping the door wide open for Max Verstappen. Not in 2026, but in 2027, when the new era of Formula One has settled into place and the power balance between teams is a little clearer. On paper, Russell has done everything you'd want from a Mercedes driver. He's taken wins in cars that had no business being near the front, stepped up as team leader after Hamilton's departure, and carried himself with the composure of someone who knows the weight of the badge on his chest. But when the other name in the conversation is Verstappen, all of that suddenly feels, negotiable. The Verstappen factor changes everything. Even now, with Red Bull still clinging to the image of a united front, there are cracks forming. The incoming regulations for 2026 could hit them hard. If they slide down the competitive order, Max's long-term contract won't mean much in the face of a frustrated 4-time world champion eyeing greener pastures. And if you're Wolff, the thought of pairing Verstappen with your homegrown prodigy Antonelli is too tempting to ignore. That's why the deal on the table for Russell isn't what he wants. A 1+1 contract, one guaranteed year with an option for the next, gives Mercedes flexibility, but it leaves Russell exposed. He's pushing for a multi-year commitment, the kind that would lock him in as part of the team's long-term future. Wolff isn't biting. Not with the prospect of Verstappen hovering just out of reach. From Russell's perspective, it's about more than just security. It's about respect. 7 seasons into Formula One, he's in his prime. He's proven he can deliver, and yet here he is, feeling like a placeholder until the real prize becomes available. The reported $35 million, 0 cents per year he's asking for, isn't just about money. It's a statement. But Mercedes is playing the long game, and that price tag is another convenient reason to keep stalling. The parallels with how Wolff handled Hamilton's last contract are hard to ignore. Wait, assess, don't overcommit until the pieces on the board are perfectly aligned. The problem is, that strategy works best when the other side doesn't have options. Russell does. If he feels boxed in, there are teams Cadillac that would roll out the red carpet for him. They might not match Mercedes' prestige, but they'd give him something just as valuable: certainty. Meanwhile, Verstappen's shadow looms larger. If Red Bull's decline is as sharp as some predict, his departure for 2027 could be the biggest driver market shift in a decade. And if that happens, Russell's fate might already be sealed, no matter what he achieves in the meantime. For Mercedes, it's a calculated risk. For Russell, it's a gamble with his career, and right now neither side is willing to fold. Behind closed doors, the conversations at Brackley have a different tone than the ones fed to the media. Toto Wolff might publicly describe Russell as a priority, but internally the phrasing is far more careful. A priority unless something better comes along, and that something better has a very specific name and a trophy cabinet that's already overflowing. Every decision now is about keeping that possibility alive without destabilizing the current lineup to the point of implosion. The financial side of Russell's demands isn't insignificant. $35 million a year puts him in the upper tier of driver salaries, a bracket usually reserved for champions or established icons. Russell's camp argues that his consistency, technical feedback, and leadership justify the number. Wolff sees the logic but doesn't share the urgency. From his perspective, locking in such a figure over multiple years would only make it harder to pivot if Verstappen signals an interest in 2027. It's not personal, it's business, pure and simple. Antonelli's presence complicates everything further. At just 19, he's already marked as the future of Mercedes' program, and Wolff is grooming him with the kind of patience usually reserved for generational talents. Pairing him with Verstappen would create a dynamic duo that could dominate for years. In that scenario, Russell's role becomes redundant, no matter how good he is. It's a cruel truth, but Formula One has never been sentimental about talent when a bigger name is on the table. The whispers about Verstappen's discontent aren't coming out of nowhere. Sources in the paddock suggest that Red Bull's preparations for the 2026 regulation shift have been rocky. Engine performance, battery tech integration, and aerodynamic changes are all question marks. If they stumble, Verstappen could find himself in a car incapable of delivering wins, let alone titles. For someone wired like Max, that's a nightmare scenario. And if Mercedes looks like the fastest route back to dominance, his loyalty will only stretch so far. Wolff's challenge is to keep all his pieces in play without tipping his hand. He can't alienate Russell to the point where he walks, but he also can't give him the long-term commitment he's asking for. The language in interviews becomes a balancing act. Praise without promises, reassurance without binding commitments. It's a delicate dance, and every word matters because drivers, like teams, read between the lines. Russell, for his part, is playing his own game. He's making sure his value is visible not just to Mercedes, but to the rest of the grid. Every podium, every overtake, every clever defensive move is currency in the driver market. He knows that in a sport where timing is everything, keeping his options open might be his only leverage. If he can position himself as the most attractive free agent in 2026, he could force Mercedes into a choice they'd rather delay. The potential fallout if Russell leaves is something Mercedes can't ignore. Losing a proven race winner in the middle of a competitive window would leave them scrambling. Antonelli might be the future, but throwing him into a leading role too soon could derail his development. The other top-tier drivers are either locked into contracts or too embedded in rival projects to be pried away easily. In other words, letting Russell slip could hurt more than Wolff wants to admit. Yet the allure of Verstappen remains overpowering. In the high-stakes calculus of Formula One, the chance to sign one of the sport's most dominant drivers can make even the safest bet look expendable. And in that equation, Russell's security is the first thing to be sacrificed. The situation hanging over Mercedes is less about speed on track and more about control off it. In Formula One, the most valuable asset a team can have isn't just a fast car, it's flexibility. The ability to move pieces around the board without being tied down to commitments that age badly is what keeps a team alive through regulation changes, unexpected retirements, or sudden market shifts. Toto Wolff understands this better than most, and right now, that philosophy is shaping every decision he makes. The Verstappen scenario isn't a distant dream. It's a strategic contingency that's being quietly prepared for. By 2027, the new rules will have had a full season to settle, and the pecking order will be clear. If Red Bull drops into the midfield and Mercedes is back on top, Verstappen won't need much convincing. Add the prospect of a pairing with Antonelli's youth and dominance in one package, and the sales pitch writes itself. But to make that happen, Mercedes needs room on the roster. And that's where George Russell's future becomes less certain. Russell's talent isn't in doubt. He's quick, disciplined, and adaptable, the kind of driver who can extract more than the car offers on paper. He's also earned the respect of engineers and mechanics for his feedback and work ethic. But his value to Mercedes is being measured against the hypothetical of Verstappen, and in that comparison, raw ability isn't enough. Prestige, proven championship pedigree, and global marketability weigh heavily in the scales. The power dynamics here are brutal. For Russell, staying means accepting terms that keep him exposed, a contract that can be cut short or sidelined if Verstappen becomes available. For Mercedes, giving him more security means risking the loss of their chance to make the biggest signing in years. Neither option feels comfortable, but only one keeps all doors open. Russell's possible counterplay is risky, but not impossible. If he senses the team's hesitation, he could put pressure on them by entertaining talks with rival outfits. Aston Martin, backed by deep funding and aggressive ambitions, could make an appealing pitch. Cadillac, eager to break into Formula One with a high-profile driver, could offer him the lead role he craves. Even teams further down the grid could dangle the promise of building around him. These moves wouldn't just be about finding a new home, they'd be about forcing Mercedes to decide whether keeping him is worth closing the Verstappen door. In the background, shareholder influence adds another layer. Ola Källenius, Mercedes CEO, has already given Wolff the freedom to explore Verstappen talks in the past. That green light suggests the appetite at the very top of the company is for star power and guaranteed success, even if it means disrupting the current balance. If Verstappen himself signals interest down the line, it's hard to imagine the corporate machine resisting the push. The coming seasons will test more than just lap times. They'll test how much risk Russell is willing to take with his career and how far Mercedes will go to secure a future they can't fully predict. Every race, every headline, every rumor in the paddock will feed into the final call. If Verstappen never becomes available, Mercedes might look back and wonder if they overplayed their hand. If he does, and they've kept the seat open, the gamble will look like genius. For Russell, the stakes are simple but stark. He's either the driver Mercedes builds around or the driver they let go to chase a legend.